My husband missed our son's graduation to vacation with his mistress. The first sign that my husband planned to miss our son's graduation was not an apology. It was the white linen shirt I found folded beneath a charcoal suit in his suitcase. Andrew hated linen. He said it wrinkled if you breathed near it, and for 20 years I had watched him choose pressed cotton for every flight, dinner, conference, and funeral. The shirt was new, still holding the cedar scent of an expensive men's store, and beside it lay a pair of swim trunks with the tags removed. Our son Caleb was graduating from high school in 12 days. Andrew had told us that an emergency meeting in Denver might keep him away until the morning of the ceremony. Denver, in early June, did not require tropical swimwear or a linen shirt the color of beach sand. I stood in our bedroom with one hand resting on the open suitcase and listened to Andrew laugh downstairs. Caleb was showing him a video from senior prank day. Their voices rose through the air vent, easy and familiar. For one foolish second, I wanted to zip the suitcase, return it to the closet, and believe the explanation I had not yet asked for. Instead, I took out my phone and photographed everything exactly as I had found it. That choice did not feel brave. It felt cold, almost mechanical, like shutting off the water after a pipe bursts. I had spent so many years keeping our household calm that even my panic knew how to organize itself. I photographed the airline luggage tag tucked into the side pocket, the sunscreen, the 2 restaurant gift cards, and the blue envelope marked Bellwether Cove in embossed silver letters. I did not open the envelope. I did not need to. Bellwether Cove was a private resort on St. Lucia. I knew because Andrew's company had once designed a vacation home for one of its investors there. Then I returned every item to its place, closed the suitcase, and went downstairs to discuss graduation parking. Caleb sat at the kitchen island in the green sweatshirt he had worn nearly every day since receiving his college acceptance. At 18, he had Andrew's height and my habit of reading a room before speaking. A stack of honor cords lay beside his cereal bowl. He was pretending they did not matter, which meant they mattered enormously. "Dad says he'll probably make it," he told me. Andrew leaned against the refrigerator, smiling with the careful optimism he used when a contractor was already 3 weeks behind. "More than probably. The meeting is Thursday. I'll take the last flight out and be home Friday morning. Worst case, I go straight from the airport to the stadium." The ceremony began at 9 on Friday. Andrew's alleged meeting was in Denver, a 2-hour flight away. Bellwether Cove required 2 connections and an international arrival. "You should confirm your flights," I said. He looked at me for half a second too long. "Already handled." Caleb nodded, relieved. I poured coffee and asked whether he had remembered to submit the name pronunciation card. My voice sounded normal. That frightened me more than if it had shaken. When the recession weakened both our employers, we built our own company at our dining table. My grandmother had left me $180,000. I invested $150,000 in what became Northline Design and Build. Andrew handled construction, vendors, and sales. I created the design packages, managed permits, and kept the books. His college friend Martin joined 6 months later with a smaller investment and an extraordinary ability to make difficult clients feel heard. Our original operating agreement gave Andrew 45%, me 35%, and Martin 20%. Andrew became the public face because I was pregnant and sick for most of the first year. After Caleb was born prematurely, I worked from home, then part-time, then in whatever hours remained after therapy appointments, school meetings, fevers, and the ordinary labor of raising a child. I told myself recognition was less important than stability. The company paid our mortgage. It funded Caleb's medical care and eventually a college account large enough to let him choose a school without calculating fear into every decision. I remained an owner, attended quarterly meetings, and reviewed annual statements. Andrew began treating those tasks as ceremonial. He would kiss my forehead and call me his favorite shareholder. 3 years before Caleb's graduation, Northline hired Brooke Ellis as director of marketing. She was 34, polished without seeming rehearsed, and skilled at turning ordinary renovations into stories lifestyle magazines wanted to publish. I liked her at first. She remembered assistants' names, sent handwritten notes after meetings, and once stayed late to help me pack centerpieces for Northline's 15th anniversary dinner. After that came the late dinners, the phone face down on the counter, the new password, and a sudden interest in fitness that involved expensive clothes but no measurable increase in exercise. None of those things alone proved anything. Together, they formed a picture I kept refusing to frame. The linen shirt changed that. That night, Andrew slept beside me with the heavy peace of someone who believed his life was under control. I stared at the ceiling until 2, then carried my laptop to the small office off our kitchen. I searched St. Lucia, executive travel, Denver, client development, and Brooks corporate card. At 2:41 a.m., I found a payment of $18,460 to Meridian Experience Partners, categorized as a prospective client retreat. The attached invoice described 4 nights of executive relationship development for 2 participants. The participant names were omitted. The dates began the Wednesday before Caleb's graduation and ended Sunday. I downloaded the invoice, approval trail, and corporate card records to an encrypted drive. Then I searched backward. Once I stopped looking for an affair and started looking for patterns, the patterns found me. A hotel in Napa billed as a vendor strategy weekend. A suite in Charleston during a conference where Northline had rented separate rooms for the rest of the team. Jewelry purchased through a client appreciation account with no client listed. Monthly payments to Harbor House residences described as temporary executive lodging, even though Northline had no employee assigned there. The ledger did not tell me who slept beside Andrew in those places. It told me something equally important. He had been making the company pay for the lies he brought home. At 4:12 a.m., I found a draft consent resolution in Northline's document archive. It proposed converting my voting interest into a non-voting economic share as part of a governance modernization. My electronic signature appeared at the bottom. The resolution had not yet been filed. A note from Andrew to the company attorney said, "Nora is comfortable with this. We will finalize after graduation when family obligations settle down." The trip was not merely a betrayal, it was a deadline. At 7 the next morning, I called a lawyer from the parking lot of a grocery store. I did not tell her my husband might be cheating. I told her I had found an unauthorized corporate resolution bearing my signature and expenses that appeared personal. Helen's tone changed before I finished the sentence. She asked whether Andrew knew I had seen the records. When I said no, she told me not to confront him, alter any account, or forward company files to a personal email. She gave me the name of a forensic accountant, instructed me to preserve documents through a method that recorded their original metadata, and scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. The forged resolution was a corporate governance issue and potentially fraud. The hidden personal expenses were a fiduciary issue. The affair, if confirmed, mattered less legally in our state than the use of marital and company assets. My grandmother's original contribution was partly traceable as separate property, but 19 years of distributions and reinvestments made the analysis complicated. The most urgent task was to prevent any unauthorized change to my ownership or movement of major assets. Helen drafted notices to Northline's attorney and registered agent stating that I had not approved any amendment to my voting rights and that no document bearing my electronic signature should be accepted without direct verification. She did not send them immediately. First, Priya created a preservation plan, and Helen checked that notifying the company would not expose me to retaliation without safeguards. Helen nodded. "You don't have to decide today. You do have to protect your ability to decide later." That became my rule for the next 12 days. I did not search Andrew's phone. I did not follow him or call Brooke. I did not ask Caleb to notice anything for me. Priya examined the records I was authorized to review and identified more than $90,000 in questionable expenses over 26 months. Some might have legitimate explanations. Many did not. She also found something I had missed. Northline had paid a $140,000 deposit on a 2-bedroom condominium at Harbor House. The purchase agreement listed an LLC formed 6 weeks earlier. Andrew owned 90% of that LLC. Brooke owned 10%. The closing was scheduled for the Monday after graduation. I read the document twice. The condo overlooked the river, 15 minutes from Northline's office and 20 minutes from our home. Andrew had once pointed to Harbor House during dinner and said the balconies looked like filing drawers. Apparently, his architectural objections had softened. Priya traced the deposit to Northline's line of credit. Andrew had labeled it a model residence for a proposed development partnership, but there was no client agreement, board approval, or business plan. A text embedded in the transaction file from Brooke read, "Once this is ours, no more hotel keys." The message was not romantic. That made it worse. Romance might have suggested recklessness. This was logistics. They had developed routines, budgets, and a place to store their future. Most of all, I cried because Caleb had spent weeks pretending not to worry that his father might miss graduation. He stared at his reflection. "Do you think Dad actually has to go?" There are lies told to deceive, and lies told to delay pain. Both still remove another person's right to understand their own life. I knew that now. But Caleb's final exams ended the next day, and his graduation speech was unfinished. I could not hand him evidence I had barely learned to hold. "I think your father is making a choice," I said carefully, "and I think you are allowed to tell him how important this is to you." Caleb rubbed the edge of the stole between his fingers. "He knows." 2 words, spoken quietly, contained more disappointment than anger. That evening, he asked Andrew to practice walking the stadium route with us on Sunday. Andrew agreed, then canceled Sunday morning because of an unexpected client brunch. I watched his car leave and received a preservation update from Priya 15 minutes later. Andrew's company card had just been used at a boutique hotel restaurant across town. Brooke's card was charged for valet parking at the same location. I walked the stadium route with Caleb alone. We found Gate C, the family entrance, and Section 114, where our tickets placed us in the 3rd row above the graduates. Caleb stood at the rail and pointed to the field. "I'll be over there somewhere," he said. "I'll find you. There will be 800 people in identical gowns. I found you in a neonatal unit full of identical blankets. I can manage a stadium." He smiled. Then he looked at the empty seat beside the one I would occupy. "Maybe Dad can watch the live stream if his flight is delayed." I wanted to tell him that he should never have to bargain down the amount of love he expected. Instead, I photographed the view so Andrew would know exactly what he was choosing not to see. At the scholarship dinner, Andrew gave Caleb a watch engraved with the date. He made a toast about discipline, integrity, and showing up when it mattered. I watched him fasten the watch around our son's wrist with steady hands. Andrew was not a man who lacked the language of loyalty. He simply believed language could substitute for it. The next morning, Martin Vale asked me to meet him for coffee. "Did you sign it?" he asked. "No." He shut his eyes briefly. I told Andrew the conversion was unnecessary. He said you wanted less liability and more freedom. He never discussed it with me. Martin stirred coffee he had not tasted. "Do you know about Harbor House?" I let the question sit between us. "Do you?" "Do you know about St. Lucia?" His spoon stopped moving. That answer was enough. Martin leaned back and looked toward the window. He told me he was meeting Pascal Renaud about the Mariner project. "Is Pascal Renaud going?" "Pascal is in physical therapy after knee surgery. He hasn't traveled in a month." I did not enjoy watching Martin understand his friend. Betrayal spreads. The person who causes it rarely gets to choose where it stops. He looked at me then. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to learn that he plans to miss his son's graduation for that trip." Andrew told me the ceremony was Saturday. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Andrew had not simply accepted a conflict. He had edited the date when describing it to the one person most likely to question him. Martin pushed his coffee away. "I'll call an independent corporate lawyer, not Jeff. The company needs separate counsel now." Watching them together did not make me doubt the evidence. It made the evidence more painful. Andrew loved Caleb. That was what I could not make fit. I had always assumed love prevented certain choices. In the days before graduation, I learned that some people treat love as a feeling they possess, not a duty they perform. 2 days before his departure, Andrew announced at dinner that the Denver meeting had expanded into a leadership retreat. Weather and flight availability made his return uncertain, but he would move mountains to be there. Caleb set down his fork. "Don't move mountains, just don't go." Andrew blinked. Our son rarely challenged him directly. "This contract supports 30 families at Northline," Andrew said. "Sometimes leadership means being where you're needed most." "You're the owner. Reschedule it." Clients don't arrange their lives around high school calendars. My graduation date has been on our refrigerator for 9 months. Andrew looked at me, expecting assistance. In the past, I would have translated for both of them, softening Andrew's authority and Caleb's hurt until nobody had to stand fully behind what they meant. I took a sip of water. Caleb asked you a direct question, I said. You should answer him directly. Andrew's eyes cooled. I have a professional obligation. I will do everything possible to return. So you're going? Yes. Caleb nodded once. He carried his plate to the sink and went upstairs. Andrew waited until his bedroom door closed. You could have helped me. Helped you do what? Explain adulthood. He understood you perfectly. His actual itinerary, obtained through the expense documentation Priya preserved, departed at 8:10 a.m. for Miami, then St. Lucia. Brooke was booked in the adjoining first-class seat. A car from Bellwether Cove would meet them beneath a sign that read, Mr. Andrew Mercer and Ms. Brooke Ellis. Do you want me to drive you? No, Brooke is picking up several of us. Several. Another word recruited to lie for him. The next morning, Caleb came downstairs before 6. He had intended to say goodbye. Andrew seemed surprised to see him. I thought you'd sleep in, he said. I wanted to give you this. Caleb handed him a small blue card. Inside was a printed copy of the graduation live stream link, the ceremony time, his row number, and a note. If you can't get back, please watch when they call my name. Andrew hugged him. I won't need the link. I'll be there. Caleb did not return the hug immediately. Then his arms closed around his father, and I saw the child he had been flicker through the young man he was becoming. Andrew kissed my forehead at the door. His suitcase wheels clicked across the threshold. I'll call from Denver, he said. Have a good trip. He looked at me, perhaps waiting for more. I had spent 2 decades giving him more. Reassurance, admiration, explanations, clean shirts, protected time, second chances he had not known were second chances. That morning, I gave him nothing but space to make his choice. Brooke's black SUV stopped at the curb. There was no one else inside. Andrew placed his suitcase in the back, climbed into the passenger seat, and did not look toward the house as they drove away. Caleb stood beside me in the doorway. I thought there were several people, he said. So did I. He looked at my face, and because he had inherited my attention to what others stepped over, I knew he saw more than I wanted him to. Mom, is Dad lying? I could no longer protect his graduation by making him doubt his own eyes. Yes, I said, but today you only need to know that his absence is about his choices. It is not about your worth. After the ceremony, I will answer every question honestly. Caleb stared at the empty street. Is he with Brooke? I swallowed. Yes. He nodded, went inside, and closed the door with extraordinary care. I expected anger. Caleb became quiet instead. He spent the morning ironing his graduation gown, even though we had already steamed it. He checked the live stream link twice, placed his father's empty ticket in the kitchen drawer, and asked whether his grandparents still planned to attend. I assured him they did. Andrew's parents, Ruth and James, knew only about the alleged Denver meeting. My sister Elena was driving in from 3 hours away. Between them, we could fill the row without Andrew. But absence has a shape. No number of other bodies can occupy it. At noon, Andrew called from an airport lounge. The background announcement said Miami. He spoke over it. Connection issue, he explained. Denver flights were a disaster, so we're rerouting through Dallas. Caleb looked at me across the kitchen. I had put the phone on speaker because Andrew asked to talk to both of us. Miami doesn't sound like Dallas, Caleb said. There was a pause. It's the television behind me, some travel program. Right. Andrew launched into a story about a demanding client. Caleb let him speak until the performance exhausted itself. Remember the live stream, he said. I told you, I'll be there. After the call ended, Caleb opened a map on his phone. The flight to St. Lucia connects through Miami. I know. How long have you known? About the trip? 6 days for certain. About the affair, I had suspicions before that, but I did not have proof. He looked hurt that I had carried knowledge without him, and I understood. I wanted you to finish your exams and have your graduation. I also needed legal advice before I confronted him. I wasn't trying to make you feel foolish. Does he know you know? I don't think so. Are you leaving him? The directness of the question almost made me answer too quickly. I am protecting our finances and my ownership in Northline. I am going to separate from him. What happens after that will be decided carefully. Caleb stared down at the counter. He promised. I moved beside him but did not touch him until he leaned into me. He had been taller than I was for 4 years, yet grief reduced age in strange ways. I held him as I had when nightmares woke him, one hand between his shoulder blades. You are not responsible for making sense of a promise he chose to break, I said. I'm not wearing the watch, he said. You don't have to. He opened the kitchen drawer and placed it beside the unused ticket. Then he ate 2 pancakes because I asked him to. We need to leave, he said. The stadium parking lots were already filling. Families walked toward the gates carrying flowers, balloons, and signs. Somewhere a father shouted his daughter's name through a megaphone, embarrassing her so completely that she glowed. At Gate C, Caleb had to join the graduates. I straightened his collar and took the obligatory photographs. Elena cried before the ceremony even began. James asked a stranger to photograph all of us. The stranger counted heads and said, "Someone missing?" "1," Caleb answered. He hugged me longer than he usually did in public. "Don't spend the whole ceremony checking the entrance." I had not realized he knew I planned to. "I won't." "Promise?" "Promise." I watched him disappear into a river of green gowns. Our seats were exactly where the practice walk had shown us. The chair beside me remained empty. Ruth draped her purse over it to save the place. Every time someone entered our row, she lifted the purse and smiled hopefully. At 8:47, Andrew texted, "Landed. Driving fast. Tell Caleb I'm coming." The time in St. Lucia was also 8:47. The flight records showed he had landed there the previous afternoon. I replied, "The ceremony is being live-streamed. He gave you the link." 3 dots appeared. Then, "I may lose service. Record his name for me." Something inside me became very still. The band began. Graduates entered in pairs while families stood and cheered. I saw Caleb before he saw us. He was scanning section 114, looking despite what he had asked me not to do. His eyes found the empty chair first. Then he found me. I raised both hands and cheered loudly enough to embarrass him. Elena, James, and Ruth joined me. Caleb smiled, small but real, and faced forward. The speeches began. Caleb had been selected as the student speaker, not valedictorian exactly, but the senior chosen by faculty to represent the class. He had hidden how much it meant to him because he feared Andrew would treat the honor as another achievement to display. His speech was titled, "The People Who Stay." When he walked to the podium, sunlight caught the gold cords around his neck. His principal adjusted the microphone. 800 green gowns became quiet. Caleb began with a joke about surviving cafeteria pizza. The stadium relaxed. Then he spoke about a janitor who had opened the robotics room early for his team, a teacher who answered emails during chemotherapy, and a friend who drove 3 classmates to school for 6 months after their bus route changed. "We like dramatic promises," he said. "They photograph well, but most love is not dramatic. It is a chair filled again and again. It is the person who knows the date, arrives before you ask, and stays after everyone else has gone home." His eyes lifted toward our section. "Today, if someone showed up for you, please don't treat that as ordinary. It may be the most extraordinary gift you receive." People applauded. I could not. My hands covered my mouth and Elena gripped my shoulder. Caleb did not mention his father. He did not need to. The empty chair beside me felt visible to the entire stadium, even though no one else knew its story. When names were called, I kept my promise. I did not check the entrance. I watched my son cross the stage. "Caleb Andrew Mercer," the announcer said. For one beat, the middle name struck me like an insult. Then Caleb shook the superintendent's hand, raised his diploma cover, and looked directly toward me. I shouted until my throat hurt. At that exact minute, Bellwether Cove posted a group photograph from a sailing excursion. Andrew stood at the edge with one hand around Brooke's waist, wearing the white linen shirt. Someone sent the photograph to Caleb before the ceremony ended. I saw him looking at his phone beneath his gown after the final caps fell. His face emptied of expression. He He handed the phone to his friend Marcus, who swore and pulled him into a hug. By the time the graduates reached their families, the image had traveled through half the senior class. Ruth saw it over Caleb's shoulder. "That can't be Andrew," she said. James took the phone, enlarged the image, and removed his glasses as if clearer vision might change what he saw. Brooke wore a white sundress. Andrew wore the linen shirt from the suitcase. No one spoke. Then Caleb turned to me. "Did you know about the picture?" "Not that one. I knew where he was." Ruth's face crumpled. "You knew?" "I learned this week. Today was Caleb's decision to make." My son looked at the empty graduation folder in his hands. "I wanted one day before everything broke." Ruth reached for him, but he stepped toward me instead. "Can we go home?" he asked. We had reservations for a family lunch at Caleb's favorite restaurant. A cake waited there with his college colors. 20 people were coming. Canceling would turn Andrew's betrayal into the only event anyone remembered. "We can," I said. "Or we can go eat the cake you chose with the people who are here. You decide." Caleb looked at Elena, his grandparents, Marcus's family, and the teachers walking past to congratulate him. "I want the cake," he said. So we went. The restaurant had decorated a private room with green and gold streamers. People arrived uncertain of what they knew, but no one asked Caleb for an explanation. His teachers praised his speech, and his friends made sure he ate cake before answering emotional questions. Halfway through lunch, Andrew called. Caleb's phone lit on the table. "Dad." The room did not go silent, but everyone nearest us noticed. Caleb stared at the screen until the call stopped. A voicemail appeared. Then Andrew called me. I stepped into the hallway with Helen's earlier advice in mind. Do not threaten, do not bargain, do not reveal the extent of the evidence. "Where are you?" Andrew demanded. Not hello, not how was it, not did he cross the stage safely. "At Caleb's graduation lunch." "Why isn't he answering?" "Because a photograph of you and Brooke at Bellwether Cove reached him before he left the stadium." Silence. I heard wind and distant music. "Nora, listen to me. That image is misleading. Are you in St. Lucia?" "The Denver meeting moved. Pascal brought us here because the development is on the island. Pascal is recovering from knee surgery at home." Another silence. This one contained calculation. "You've been talking to Martin." "Are you in St. Lucia with Brooke?" "A larger team was supposed to come. People canceled." "Did you watch Caleb graduate?" The connection failed. "What did he speak about?" "I haven't seen the recording yet." "Then the connection did not fail. You did not try." His breath struck the phone. "I am dealing with a critical business situation. I will explain when I get home. Please keep this contained until then. Do not embarrass Caleb further by turning a misunderstanding into gossip." There it was, the old reflex. If I exposed what he had done, I would become the person who damaged the family. "You missed his graduation," I said. "You lied about where you were. A resort published the evidence. None of that is mine to contain." "Put Caleb on." "No." Andrew had heard me disagree. He had rarely heard me deny him access to something he believed was his. "You don't get to interfere with my relationship with my son. You interfered with it when you boarded the plane. Caleb will choose when he speaks to you." His voice dropped. "Be very careful, Nora." The threat was quiet enough to preserve his idea of himself. I felt fear, but it arrived beside preparation. "All communication about Northline or our finances goes through counsel," I said. "All personal communication should be in writing. You will not return to the house without arranging it first." "My name is on that house." "So is mine. Helen Cho will send you the temporary agreement." "Helen Cho? You hired a divorce lawyer before asking me one question?" I looked through the restaurant doorway at Caleb cutting his cake while Elena held the plate. "I asked you where you were. You lied every time." Andrew started to speak. I ended the call. My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Helen had told me the first boundary often felt like cruelty to the person who benefited from having none. Knowing that did not make it easy. When I returned, Caleb glanced at my face. "Was it him?" "Yes." "Did he say sorry?" "No." Caleb nodded as if I had confirmed a prediction. Then he handed me a slice of cake. At 11, after everyone left and the backyard grew quiet, Caleb found me removing graduation flowers from their plastic sleeves. He sat at the island where Andrew had made his toast about integrity 4 nights earlier. "Can I know all of it now?" he asked. I told him what concerned our family: the affair, the trip, the condo, the plan to alter my ownership. I did not share every hotel or expense. Children, even adult children, should not become evidence lockers for their parents' marriages. He listened without interrupting. "Was Dad planning to leave after graduation?" "I think he was preparing that option. The condo closing was Monday." "So he waited until I was done with school?" "Maybe he told himself that made it kinder." "It doesn't." "No." Caleb turned the engraved watch over in his hands. He had retrieved it from the drawer. "He named me after himself, gave me this, and then left. It feels like he wanted credit in advance." I sat beside him. "Your middle name belongs to you now. You decide what it means." His eyes filled, but he looked upward until the tears receded. "I don't want to talk to him yet." "You don't have to." "Will you be okay?" The question broke something open in me. On the day he graduated, after his father disappointed him publicly, Caleb was checking whether I could survive. I refused to make him carry that. "I am hurt," I said. "I am also capable, supported, and receiving excellent advice. You do not need to stay home for college, choose sides for me, or manage my feelings. My life is my responsibility." "You always say that when you're scared." "I am scared, and I am still telling the truth." He leaned his shoulder against mine. We sat without speaking until the refrigerator motor clicked off. For the first time in 12 days, I slept through the night. Andrew returned on Sunday, 1 day earlier than planned. He arrived sunburned, pulled the suitcase to our front step, and discovered that I would not let an unannounced confrontation into the house. Andrew knocked hard enough to shake it. "Nora, open the door." Caleb was upstairs packing books for college. He came to the landing and looked down at me. "Do you want him here?" I asked. "No." I spoke through the door. "Caleb does not want contact today. Your clothes and medication are in the garment bags Helen described. I will place them on the porch after you step back." "This is insane. You cannot exile me because a photograph looks bad." "The photograph is not why you are outside. Your choices are." "My choices?" "You ambushed the company, poisoned my parents, and turned my son against me while I was working." Caleb descended the stairs. Before I could stop him, he stood a few feet behind the door. "She didn't turn me against you," he said. "You promised to watch. You didn't even open the link." The silence outside lasted several seconds. "Caleb, let me in so I can explain." "Were you on vacation with Brooke?" "It was a business trip that became complicated." "That's not an answer. Adults sometimes have situations that cannot be reduced to yes or no." Caleb looked at me, almost incredulous. "This one can." He waited. Andrew did not answer. "Go to a hotel," Caleb said. "You seem to know a lot of them." He returned upstairs. I did not feel triumph. Hearing my son's voice harden around pain was not victory. Monday's Northline board meeting began at 9. Andrew tried to cancel it at 7:14, citing an illness. Independent counsel informed him that Martin and I, holding 55% of the ownership, had requested the meeting under the operating agreement. His attendance was optional. He arrived at 8:58, wearing the charcoal suit that had traveled beneath the linen shirt. Andrew walked in, saw Helen beside me, and stopped. "This is a family matter," he said. Martin stood at the far end of the table. "Company funds make it a company matter." Andrew looked betrayed. "You're accepting her version without hearing mine?" "We're here to hear yours." The independent attorney activated the recorder and explained the agenda. First, the disputed governance resolution. Second, the Harbor House transaction. Third, questioned travel and entertainment expenses. Fourth, interim management authority while an audit proceeded. When Andrew argued that I had not participated in operations for years, Helen placed the operating agreement before him and asked whether he disputed my 35% voting interest. "Not currently," he said. "Currently?" the independent attorney repeated. Andrew leaned back. "Nora and I discussed restructuring. The signature issue is a technical error." Describe when and where she authorized the change. He said we had spoken in our kitchen after Christmas. I had been in Arizona with Elena that week, helping after her surgery. Travel records confirmed it. He changed the date. The room became silent. Andrew looked at me. You told me to handle things. I never told you to sign my name. He began explaining intent. He had wanted to make Northline attractive to investors. My non-operational vote created uncertainty. Everything was ultimately for the family's benefit. The independent attorney stopped him. We will not determine criminal intent in this meeting. We are establishing whether the document was authorized. Ms. Mercer says it was not. The technical evidence supports her statement. The resolution was declared invalid and formally withdrawn. Next came Harbor House. Andrew's composure finally broke. This is humiliating and irrelevant. The company paid for it, Martin said. That is the definition of relevant. Andrew attacked the methodology. He said high-value clients expected relationship building and privacy. Priya asked for the client names associated with each charge. He provided none. Brooke has the documentation, he said repeatedly. At 10:32, Brooke's lawyer delivered a file to independent counsel. It contained messages from Andrew directing her to categorize their personal expenses as business development. It also contained a proposed employment amendment, promising her a large severance payment if a change in personal circumstances affected her role. The amendment had never been approved by the board. Andrew stared at the message printouts. She is protecting herself. Yes, Helen said. You should consider doing the same by listening to your attorney. At 11, Martin proposed a resolution placing Andrew on administrative leave as managing director, pending the audit. He would retain his ownership but lose authority to spend company funds, bind Northline to contracts, supervise Brooke, or access records beyond those required by law. I seconded the motion. Andrew was not permitted to vote on a resolution concerning his alleged misconduct under the conflict provisions he had insisted on adding years earlier. Martin and I voted yes. The motion passed. Andrew rose so abruptly that his chair struck the wall. You cannot run this company without me. I looked around the conference room at plans drawn by teams he rarely credited, schedules maintained by people whose names never appeared in magazines, and financial systems I had built before Caleb could walk. Northline has never been only you, I said. He pointed at me. You haven't done real work here in years. Martin's face tightened, but I answered first. Then it should be easy for you to explain why you needed my vote badly enough to copy my signature. Andrew's hand fell. I remained seated. For days, I had imagined that moment as vindication. In reality, I felt as if I had survived a car accident and was waiting for pain to identify every injured place. Martin closed the door after Andrew. I'm sorry. For which part? For believing him when his version required you to become less competent than I knew you were. That apology mattered because it named the harm accurately. I thanked him. Then we began the much less dramatic work of protecting payroll, reassuring project managers, notifying the insurer, and explaining to the bank why Northline needed temporary dual authorization on major transactions. Revenge, I discovered, looked less like champagne and more like a 4-hour meeting about cash controls. By Wednesday, the story had escaped every container Andrew wanted to place around it. Northline employees knew he was on leave, though the company statement did not mention why. Parents from Caleb's school had seen the resort photograph. One of Andrew's largest clients called Martin, concerned that personal charges might have been assigned to his project. The audit expanded. Andrew sent me 17 messages in 3 days. They moved through denial, blame, nostalgia, anger, and negotiation with such speed that I sometimes received 2 different versions of him within 1 minute. The trip was business. The affair began because our marriage had been over for years. He had never intended to miss graduation. I had driven him away by caring more about Caleb than our marriage. Brooke meant nothing. Brooke understood him. Harbor House was an investment. Harbor House was a mistake. The signature was administrative convenience. The signature had been added by someone else. We had built everything together. I was trying to steal what he built alone. Helen asked me to respond only to logistics. I followed her advice. Caleb blocked Andrew's number after receiving a voicemail that began as an apology and ended by accusing me of manipulating the board meeting. He saved the voicemail first. Not for court, but because part of him still needed proof that the cruelty had really happened. "I keep thinking maybe I'm being dramatic," he told me. "That thought has kept me in bad situations longer than the situations deserved," I said. We found him a therapist who specialized in family rupture and young adults. He complained about the word rupture, but attended. I found my own therapist. Legal strategy could protect assets. It could not teach my nervous system that every closed door did not hide another life. Brooke resigned from Northline through counsel. Her resignation did not erase the company's claims against her, but it removed an immediate supervisory problem. She returned her laptop, phone, and access cards. In exchange for the company not opposing her request to negotiate repayment before filing civil claims, she agreed to cooperate with the audit. I saw her once, from across the lobby, when she came to sign an inventory statement. She wore a plain navy dress and no makeup. For months, in my imagination, she had been glamorous enough to explain my husband's willingness to destroy us. In person, she looked frightened and ordinary. She approached me before Helen could redirect her. "Nora, I am sorry," she said. I believed she felt sorry. I did not confuse that feeling with repair. "You knew he was married," I said. "You knew when Caleb's graduation was." Her eyes lowered. "He said you had agreed to separate after Caleb finished school. He said the trip was the first time we could stop hiding." "Did he say I agreed to give up my vote?" She hesitated. "He said you didn't care about the company anymore." The same story, distributed efficiently. "And yet you helped charge your vacation and condo to that company." "He said it was part of my compensation." "Was it approved?" She had no answer. "I am not the person who can make you feel forgiven," I said. "Cooperate honestly, repay what you owe. Decide not to become this version of yourself again. That's the work available to you." I walked away before she could hand me her guilt. Andrew stayed first at a hotel and then in a furnished apartment. Brooke did not move in. According to the only personal message of his I accidentally saw, she ended their relationship within a week of the board meeting. Andrew blamed me for that too, as if I had stolen the future they financed with my company. The preliminary audit became final in late August. Of $136,400 in questioned costs, $121,880 had no legitimate business support. Northline's insurer and counsel negotiated repayment. Andrew agreed to reimburse the company through the cancellation of distributions, sale of a boat, and deduction from any eventual buyout of his shares. Brooke accepted responsibility for a smaller allocated portion based on the expenses she submitted and benefits she received. The signature issue went to the district attorney after independent counsel concluded that Northline could not ethically hide it. Andrew entered a diversion agreement months later. Restitution, a fine, community service, and no access to another person's electronic signature credentials. Because the resolution had not been filed or used to complete a transfer, the case did not send him to prison. It did something he considered almost as unbearable. It created a public record stating that the signature was not his to use. Our divorce did not resolve in one triumphant hearing. It took 11 months, 3 mediations, 2 temporary order disputes, and a spreadsheet large enough to require its own color key. Andrew initially demanded the house, majority ownership of Northline, half of Caleb's college account, and reimbursement for the years I had chosen not to work. Helen's response attached tax returns showing my shareholder distributions, design royalties from early projects, and unpaid management hours recorded in company minutes. The phrase, "chosen not to work," disappeared from his next filing. Caleb's college account had been established under a custodial structure that made the funds his for education. Andrew could not divide it. He argued that because Caleb was 18, any additional parental contribution should be voluntary. I agreed, then used part of my distributions to fund the remaining projected costs. Martin and I also created a merit scholarship at Northline for employees' children. We named it after my grandmother, not after any Mercer. The house was more complicated. I loved the maple tree and the kitchen where Caleb had done homework, but I did not want to spend the next decade maintaining rooms designed for a family that no longer existed. Andrew wanted the house mainly because he believed leaving it meant losing. At mediation, I offered him 2 options: He could buy my equity at the appraised value within 60 days, or we would sell and divide the proceeds according to the traced contributions and marital property agreement. He accepted the buyout, then failed to obtain financing after banks reviewed his suspended income and restitution obligations. We sold the house. On the last afternoon, Caleb and I stood beneath the maple. Its roots had lifted the patio another fraction of an inch. "Dad always wanted to cut it down," he said. "The buyers promised to keep it." "Do you believe them?" "I put it in the landscaping addendum." He laughed. "Of course you did." I moved into a townhouse near the river, smaller than our old home but filled with windows. For the first time since Caleb was born, I designed a room solely around what I liked. I chose deep blue walls for my office, open shelves, a long drafting table, and no television. When Caleb left for college, the silence hurt. It was also honest silence. No car in the driveway made me wonder where its owner had claimed to be. No face-down phone controlled the temperature of dinner. I missed my son and mourned my marriage, but I did not miss being confused. Northline faced a decision about Andrew. The leave could not remain indefinite. His public reputation had been a major business asset, yet the audit made returning him to management impossible. He proposed selling his shares to an outside investor who promised to restore him as a consultant. Our operating agreement gave Martin and me a right of first refusal. The price he demanded assumed the company was worth what it had been before his misconduct. Our valuation expert accounted for client losses, legal fees, and reputational damage. Andrew called the lower figure retaliation. "It is arithmetic," Priya said during mediation. Ultimately, Martin and I bought most of Andrew's interest, while a small employee trust purchased the rest. I used part of the proceeds from the house sale and financing secured against my distributions. My ownership increased from 35% to 47%. Martin held 43%. The employee trust held 10%. Andrew received enough to begin again after restitution and divorce obligations, but not enough to pretend consequences had made him a martyr forever. He launched a consulting practice. For a while, his website described him as the founder of Northline. Council required him to change it to co-founder. My first day back in an active role was not dramatic. I arrived early, found that the design library still contained labels in my handwriting, and spent an hour learning new project software from a coordinator younger than Caleb. Some employees viewed me as the owner's wife who had won a divorce. I did not demand that they revise their opinions. I worked. I reviewed bids, corrected costly spatial assumptions, and restored a design mentorship program Andrew had cut because it did not produce immediate revenue. Within 6 months, Northline won a civic housing project based partly on an accessibility concept I developed with Helen's Legal Center. The local business journal requested an interview about the company's leadership transition. I declined to discuss Andrew's affair. I spoke about governance, collaborative design, and the danger of confusing a visible leader with the whole organization. The article's headline called me Northline's quiet co-founder. I asked them to remove quiet. They did. 1 year after the graduation, Caleb called me from his dorm and asked whether I still had the blue card with the live stream link. I found it in a box of documents I had taken from the old house. The paper was creased where Andrew had folded it into his wallet, though he had never used it. "Throw it away," Caleb said. "Are you sure?" "I don't need proof anymore." That sentence told me he was healing. Andrew had spent the year trying to repair his relationship with Caleb in the way he once ran Northline. Big proposals, urgent messages, expensive gestures. Caleb returned the gifts and ignored the speeches. Eventually, with his therapist's help, he sent his father 3 conditions. No blaming me. No lying about what happened. No promises about future events. If Andrew wanted trust, he would have to build it through small actions that did not demand applause. For several months, Andrew did nothing. Then he began sending 1 short email every Sunday. Some were clumsy. Some contained apologies followed by explanations, and Caleb did not answer those. Gradually, the explanations disappeared. When Andrew wrote, "I missed your graduation because I chose a vacation with Brooke, then lied because I wanted to protect myself," Caleb replied for the first time. They met for coffee during winter break. Caleb came home sad but steady. He said forgiveness, if it happened, would not restore the father he thought he had. It would only allow him to see the father who actually existed and decide what relationship was possible. I told him that was more wisdom than I had possessed at 18. Andrew apologized to me once without asking for anything. It arrived by email after our divorce became final. He admitted that he had mistaken my patience for dependence and my invisible work for an absence of power. I read it twice, saved it with the legal records, and did not reply. An apology can be true without becoming an invitation. The following spring, Northline hosted the first scholarship ceremony for employees' children. Caleb came home to present the award named for my grandmother. We held it in the company's renovated courtyard beneath strings of warm lights. Martin stood beside the employee trustees. Priya attended and joked that she had finally received an invitation involving no spreadsheets. Before the ceremony, I noticed an empty chair in the front row. For a second, my body remembered Section 114. The purse lifted hopefully, the stadium entrance, the promise I had kept not to look. Then a project coordinator arrived late, apologized, and filled it. Caleb stepped to the microphone. He was older in subtle ways, more certain of where to place his hands and less afraid of silence. He spoke about my grandmother investing in work she believed would outlive her. He spoke about the people whose names did not appear on buildings, but whose labor held them up. This time, he did not need to speak about those who stayed. Everyone in front of him had. Afterward, we stood together while photographs were taken. I did not scan the edge of the crowd for Andrew. I no longer measured important days by whether he regretted missing them. People sometimes called what happened my revenge. I understood why. Andrew lost control of the company he treated as his private account. He lost the house he assumed would wait for him, the woman he chose over us, and the easy admiration of a son who once believed every promise. I kept my ownership, restored my career, and built a life he could no longer rearrange. But the most important thing I took from him was not money, status, or Northline. I took back the labor of protecting him from the truth. After that, consequences did not need my help. They simply arrived, sat in the chair he had left empty, and stayed.